Perfect. Thank you, everyone, to our third day of Career Week. Welcome. So we have our marketing panel here today. So let's give them a big round of applause. Perfect. So as I mentioned earlier, if you are in the room and at any point you have a question or a comment you want to add, please, by all means, raise your hand. And I just have to run this microphone over to you so that our people online are able to hear what you're saying. Yes, but without further ado, I'd like to welcome Justin, Neha, and Jake. Perfect. So we'll start down the line with our panelists. If you could please describe your role and the organization that you currently work for.
Hi, again, I'm Justin. I work for Garrison Brewing Company. I'm the marketing and brand manager for, we're one of the leading craft breweries in the region. I've been around for 25 years, and we brew over 30 different varieties of beers, from sours, bitters, sweet, to dark and hazy and everything in between. So yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Neha, and I work for the Halifax Chamber of Commerce, of which you guys are all members. Shameless plug there. I am the event coordinator there, and I've been there for just over a year. So lots of learning, and I'm excited to give you the recent graduate side of things today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jake. I work for the government of Nova Scotia at Communications Nova Scotia. So we're like a full service communications agency for the government. So we do everything from comms planning to marketing. I'm on the marketing team, focusing on social media and video and translation. Anything that an agency does, we do it, but for the government and the taxpayer, like you guys.
Thank you. Our next question is wondering about how you ended up where you are today. How did you get into the marketing industry? Was this something that you studied in school?
So yeah, I started off my career in the political side of things. So I know all about communications in Nova Scotia. I started off at the Premier's office. So that came with its own bunch of challenges from the policy side of things. So that meant that I had to, especially when you're in the political side of things, you got to do things on the cheap because everything's accountable. So we started to pick up skills there on the marketing side. And then I went on to the world of nonprofit. So that's even more on the cheap for as far as learning how to do things. So really spent a decade in that industry, working really hard to develop those skills. And then I found this opportunity with Garrison Brewing, which was started off as the marketing, events, and retail manager. But as we grew into something a little bit bigger. We quickly shifted our tap rooms from our retail stores to being more of a tap room, especially where we're right down beside the cruise ship terminal. There was a huge opportunity that I saw when I first started as the retail manager to say, okay, we have tens of thousands of people disembarking ships and re-embarking ships who are looking to offload their Canadian dollars while they're here. And so why don't we shift the focus from being a room where we were basically a couch that people could sample beers and buy some to take home to being primarily a tap room. So we have expanded our facility tenfold. And then on top of that, we expanded to another location on Quimple Road called the Oxford Tap Room, which allowed us to then need to hire somebody to focus on that. So then I shifted more into the marketing role. So it's something that you continually have to learn. And I didn't necessarily go directly from school, but it was definitely political science has a lot of marketing, and when you work in politics, it's a lot of marketing things, so you pick it up really easily and fast. So
how many people have been to one of the Garrison locations? Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, I'm just going to reread this question a little, but I ended up at the Halifax Chamber after being a COVID graduate and working at Scotiabank. So I was fortunate enough. I feel like, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
A bit too close. I was fortunate enough to have a job as soon as I graduated, which I got through my co-op placement. So I'm going to very much encourage that. I got marketing experience as well in my second term there, as well as my third. So if you are wondering how to get started, that is your first step. And funnily, I went to a chamber event as a member, a student member, and I was like, I'm going to work here. this is my goal. I came here as an international student, so obviously I was more cautious of like, how can I make connections? How can I grow myself in Nova Scotia? And that the chamber was my way. So I set my eyes on my target, applied to a few co-op terms there as well. And I actually didn't get those, but you know, when you want something, you work hard enough for it. And that's how I'm at the chamber.
Perfect. And students can go to chamber events for free?
So we have a bunch of free events, but also events that you need to get tickets for. I've worked with a couple people at the business department, and they're always looking to encourage the student body to go. So they do purchase tickets. So if you're ever on our website and you see something that you're interested in, just let Miriam or forget her name, Jermaine, just let them know, and you might be able to attend. But we have free networking events every single month. We have our webinars, our power lunches are coming back, simple things that you can kind of start to get your foot in the door.
Thank you.
Was social media marketing part of my career plan? No, because it didn't exist when I was at school. I remember signing up for Facebook when I was at university, so it was definitely not part of my outlook. And in fact, I took an English literature degree at St. FX, so you know, I was a little bit more into the Shakespeare and less into the marketing. But graduating with that degree, I quickly realized that I was, you know, virtually unhireable unless I got more schooling. So I went to King's here in Halifax and got a journalism degree. Unfortunately, and this may be something that the room can relate to, I sort of graduated into a recession when I graduated with my journalism degree, and it really destroyed the journalism industry. And I kind of had to think on my feet and think outside the box. So I traveled abroad. I lived in South Korea for 5 years. I taught English over there, which is it was a pretty common path for a lot of people who graduated when I did. All you need is a degree in anything. You can be a science major and teach English as a second language. They just want a degree. While there, though, I worked with the local English broadcasting station in Busan, South Korea. So that, you know, with the idea of keeping my journalism skills sharp. But when I moved back, I found that the journalism industry still didn't really recover, and I don't know necessarily that it ever will. So I decided to make the leap into the comms and marketing side, and you know, there's a ton of overlap in the skills there. I found, especially because I focused on broadcast journalism, that really helped me out with writing kind of short, snappy, tight pieces of marketing, and also translating big ideas into ideas that you can digest easily. So I moved back to Canada, tried to get into comms, which is easier said than done. You don't just say, oh, I'll jump in that industry. But I did, and I just found like a crappy job that I hated, but I did it for like a year and a half, and that just got me the experience and got my feet wet in the industry. And then I landed a job with the Trailer Park Boys as their social media manager, which was really a dream job in a lot of ways. Like, it was crazy. Like, I did get paid to curse and swear on social media. I'd get fired if I didn't curse and swear on social media. And it was an excellent opportunity to work on a local brand that I kind of grew up with as a fan, and market it to an international audience. They're big everywhere, thanks to Netflix. So somehow I parlayed that into the government. I think they were interested in my, you know, in the fact that I did reach a large international audience. Way less swearing in my current job, far fewer drug references, that kind of thing. But I always tell people it's the exact same job, except completely different. So
Thank you. Our next question is, what do you like best about your fields of work? And on the flip side, what do you dislike the most or find the most challenging?
The thing I like the most is the multiple stream side of things for us. Like because I manage the whole marketing side of things. So I've got social media, I've got design, I've got how we approach the NSLC coming through to me. So it's the multiple streams that really help really keep my day interesting and interactive. And there are definitely high times when, hospitality season's going full tick. There's events like Jazz Fest, Pride, everything going on, and there's lulls like we have right now going into November where we shift quickly into planning mode, so we then can hit off the summer season full go. Yeah, so the multiple streams, keeping it fresh and different and interesting is always an issue. There's also always a social media comment or complaint. We just launched a collaboration yesterday with Maker Pizza based out of Toronto. And so they kind of went a little quickly because that beer hasn't shipped yet to the LCBO, but everyone's excited to work with a brewery. So yeah, and then the things I don't like, probably it's just the hours. Like if anyone's worked in hospitality or beverage and food, the industry's a night thing. Like it's weekends, nights, it's the whole thing. So as a new parent that just had a new baby in July, it's tough to balance the two of them. And so we just wrapped up HalCon here over the weekend and our sponsorship there. So we're there until all weekend long, slinging beers and talking to folks that like our product. And so it does come with a challenge there, but we're getting as we grow as a company, we're growing more and more with the team. We hire an amazing summer student every year. If anyone's looking for a summer job, we do the federal summer program. And so that allows us to bring somebody on and teach them those skills to help us get through the summer. So those are probably the two dichotomies there, but the majority of the day is smiles. I do work in a brewery. I'm pretty lucky. So yeah.
And is that summer position for marketing students specifically, or?
Yeah, they would be working directly with my group of folks that would be handling a lot of the event execution and going and cleaning gear and like learning all the ins and outs that quickly translate into any other brewery or any other company across the country, really, where you learn all the technical skills because you need to be able to work on the fly when you're at a beer show and your beer won't pour and things like that, or end up to the social media side. So you come with a skill set, we'll make a job happen for you. Basically, if you want to do all the writing for us, we'll let you do all the writing for us. Like that's the thing. Like we want to bring people into the organization that we see a need for. And so yeah.
Great. Thank you.
It's been suggested that we switch things up a little bit. Sure. What I really like about my field of work is the creative side. So be able to take, if you use your writing or your strategy in just the right way, you can convince people to do things. I guess that's the whole nature of marketing. But in my role, we're not trying to turn a profit at government or sell anything per se. We're trying to let people know our motto, I guess, at CNS is we tell Nova Scotians what their government is doing and why. We all, as taxpayers and people who live in Nova Scotia, are sort of invested in the government, and there's lots of programs and services that you should know about and take advantage of. So it's really satisfying to do that. I guess what I don't like about my role, or what's challenging, is when the opposite things happen and the creativity kind of gets sucked out of it, and maybe it's a time crunch, or maybe the subject matter doesn't call for something silly or fun. And sometimes we just fall into habits and you're just kind of churning out material. So just kind of the most challenging thing, I think, in my role, and probably any marketing role, is to force yourself out of that comfort zone and don't let your marketing brain atrophy. It's a continual battle to stay fresh.
Many people might not know this, myself included, until I was lucky enough to work with Jake at Nova Scotia government, but there actually is a lot of room for creativity. And shameless plug, but the NS government is actually on TikTok if you want to give them a follow. So NSGov.
So no, I didn't start the channel, but someone in this room did help start that channel. So yes, we're on TikTok, if you'll believe it. Thanks to Megan.
And we would love more followers. So thank you.
All right, I'm gonna engage you guys a little bit. Show of hands, how many of you like repetitive work? None of you. Okay, one, fine. Accepted, agree to disagree. So what I love about my job is that every single day is something different. It's never, you can never do the same thing twice. At the chamber, we do over 100 events a year, which is crazy to say out loud, and it is crazy to live. But it's always different, and there's always a different, like, whatever idea you have, chances are you're most likely going to implement it. It's super creative. They're super open to new ideas. It's just a wonderful place for a mind like mine, where I can't focus on more than one. Like, I can't focus on the same thing for like more than 2 minutes. It's a goldfish brain. I'm sure some of you may experience that as well. So I love that every single day is different. And even though it's busy, I still very much enjoy that. I say this at all of my interviews in the past, or I've said this. I thrive on stress. I love being stressed, even though in the moment I might have a few tears. It still like gives me an adrenaline rush. And so that's what I love. It's always something new. And I think as marketing students, that's probably why you're in this field, because you love that creativity, love doing new things, and yeah, just exploring that world.
Thank you. Who here is about to graduate in the next 2 years? Give or take a few? Next 3? Yeah, perfect. So looking back upon when you were starting your career, when you had just graduated, is there anything that you would do differently?
All right. Hi, it's me again. What would I do differently? Absolutely nothing, because I said yes to everything. I did all the things that made me feel awkward, anxious, and uncomfortable. I went to this gala dinner, part of RBC's, one of their dinners anyway. And I was the only student on a table full of like radio hosts. I think they were from Stingray, if I can remember correctly. And I had nothing to say, but I was there and I stayed the entire dinner. So that's what I would say. I would do nothing over, because I did everything that made me feel uncomfortable, that challenged me. And as an international student, how many of you are international students here? Quite a few. You want to build those connections, and you want to feel uncomfortable, because the moment you step out there, that's when people start to get to know you. So yeah, absolutely nothing different.
Go next, I guess. For me, I guess getting those additional skills under your belt early are huge. Like, the degree is hugely important, don't get me wrong, but it's those concentrations that you can get on top of it. So things like Google has an amazing set of free certificates you can get in the ad world and things like that, that'll make you set apart, especially in this market. Digital marketing, I would say, is probably one of the most underused thing in the Nova Scotia marketplace right now when it comes to tourism hospitality. Very few people are doing it well. And so getting that knowledge right up ahead is huge. Also skills, adding to your skill set, like, you know, people come to, we just hired somebody. There's a little bit of a process, because for my team, it needs to be multifaceted. So learning a little bit about everything is important, but also making sure if you put something on your resume, you know how to do it. So if you say you're involved with Adobe Creative Suite, and I give you AI the very first day and you don't know what you're doing, then it's going to be an issue. So being honest, adding to your skill set, and just, I can echo her comments, is getting out there. If you're looking to get a job in a specific space, go out there and meet with those people that are hiring in that specific space, and ask them questions before you sit there and say, I would like a job, please, sir or ma'am, because it makes a huge difference to get to know. Like, if I had someone like that, I would have probably turned to them rather than going through the very deep process of going through a thick pile of resumes. And you get a lot of people applying for marketing jobs, and it becomes very small very quickly. But if I had somebody that I knew and I had coffee with and I've already talked to, I probably would have put them at the top of the pile. Like, it just makes my job easier. So I know networking seems awkward. Like she said, it is awkward. You're going up to people with business cards and being like, hey, I am so-so. We'd love to sit down for a coffee a little bit. But it does build your network, and so you can tap on those resources away a lot easier. Yeah.
Yeah, to echo these ideas here, if it feels awkward and uncomfortable, it's probably good for your career. Just dig in and do it. If I could have done anything differently, I probably would have studied marketing. If I could go back even further to before graduation, I've been able to transfer a lot of skills from the other parts of my experience, and like Justin said, there's so many great things online for free that can kind of keep you current and modern in your approach. But I basically spent 4 years at St. FX reading poetry under a tree, so I don't have the confidence in marketing that some of my colleagues have. I work with some people who have graduated from this program, and I'm always just in awe of how confident they are and strategic in the big picture. So you guys you have a leg up there. But you just keep learning as you go, formally and informally, and the more you can get yourself out there, the better.
Thank you. Of course, it wouldn't be 2022 if we weren't looping back to COVID and asking about how maybe your role specifically, or the marketing industry as a whole, or a bit of both, has changed due to the pandemic.
Getting to go first twice. So like I said, I have been at the Halifax Chamber for just a year. So this is my first kind of proper job since graduation. But I will say, since COVID, we've seen that people are just tired of being on Zoom. There's a lot of webinar fatigue. And so we have to find ways to re-engage our members, our community. So that has definitely been something that we've been adapting to since the pandemic. Obviously, during COVID, it was a big shift. I can't speak too much to it, as I didn't have that experience at the moment, at that time, but there was a big shift of going to fully virtual events, and then transitioning back out has really been something that we're trying to learn and adapt. So I remember in April, we did, I think, 3 big signature events, which is more than 800 people at each event, back to back in the span of 3 weeks. And so that, just to make sure that we're not sending too much content to our members, or over competing with our own selves, it has been something to be mindful of. And I think, yeah, that would be it. No more to say.
The pandemic changed my role in many ways. Firstly, working in government social media, our live streams with the premier, there's 3 premiers over that time, and Dr. Strang became kind of must-see TV. So we were the source of information, and our posts related to restrictions and vaccines and all that kind of thing really drew the entire province into our social media world. So our follower count exploded. We had around 30,000 Facebook followers before the pandemic, and now we have 170,000, quintupled, more than quintupled. Similarly, Instagram, we had 5,000 people following us on Instagram, and it's now 45,000. So actually, yeah, I have this one's crazy. At one point in the pandemic, we had 7 million impressions in 1 week. So that's 1 million impressions every day. And you can kind of twist the math and think there's about 1 million Nova Scotians. So maybe we were reaching them every single day that week. But it was just because we happened to be in this position where everybody wanted to know what we were talking about. So this also meant for a large influx of questions and comments. Megan helped us out a bit with that when she was a co-op with us. So we had to deal with like a range of emotions, shall we say, mostly in the pissed off end of the spectrum, because we were just telling people they couldn't do things, or things were changing all the time and everyone was confused. So we had to really shore up our policies on social media terms of use, what people can and can't say on our channels, what we should delete, in what cases should we ban people. We don't typically want to ban people from government social media, but sometimes we had to. And we also had to take care of ourselves. There was a lot of negativity. We'd get like sometimes 10,000 comments on a live stream that we would have to, like per live stream, that we would have to sort through. And even if you have really tough skin, if you're looking at negativity all day, it weighs you down. So we really had to work hard at self-care and avoiding burnout and that kind of thing. And I guess finally, maybe more excitingly, because we were putting out so much messaging all the time to so many people, and it was such a constant fire hose of information, we really felt the need to spice it up a little bit. So we did actually get to be creative and sometimes even funny on government social media. So we would do graphic design that would mimic some pop culture things, or we engaged some influencers. We had Alicia McCarville do a series of videos for us. I spoke to my old bosses at the Trailer Park Boys and they did a PSA for us. So these are things that we'd never really be able to do, or maybe wouldn't have the budget to do, but because it was so fast and furious, we really had to dig deep. And it was recognized by the New York Times and Maclean's magazine, Nova Scotia's social media work in particular, as perhaps one of the reasons why the province was so safe as it was at various times during the pandemic, which was super gratifying. So, it was a very, very hard time. I think I've selectively forgotten a lot of it, but it really does bring the best out of you.
So I was probably one of those people that was clicking and then re-clicking and then clicking again to watch it over and over again, because I was one of the people that had to like tell the public. So in our tap rooms and things like that, obviously we had to like be part of that public service announcement, because we had rules that were changing all the time and we got some negativity end of that, but we were just doing what the government said we had to do, which I think was to the benefit of all of us. So I would be creating graphics on all, and the provincial government would be giving us stuff that we'd be able to post as a public venue and things like that. We did have before the pandemic, I would say our online store was a very minor part of what we did as far as like some merch. We didn't actually get into selling beer online because who wants beer delivered to their door? You have to be there and pick it up. And the rules around delivering beer to a direct customer were just that. Like you had to be an ID and the person who purchased it had to be there. So it's just like, well, let's not deal with that headache. But within a week of the pandemic, we had an online functioning retail store that, my boss, I knew a little bit of coding. Now I know a lot of coding to how to make our custom website work, that we could do our own delivery through Shopify. We did lots of deliveries to the point where our sales team, who didn't have any bars to go see anyway, went and were our delivery drivers. So we did do something that one of the funny things that came out of one of the live streams was, I think it was on a Friday, where the Stay of the Blazes Home comment was. By Monday, we were doing a test batch of beer and we didn't really have a name for it. So my boss calls me on the Sunday morning afterwards, and I'm like, oh no, voicemail. Like you just click him over and be like, and then he calls again. I'm like, no, come on, it's Sunday, voicemail. And then he calls a third time. I'm like, okay, something's on fire. So I answered. He's like, what do you think about doing that beer that we had, that light beer that we have in the tank, calling it Stay the Blazes Home? I'm like, okay. So I'm the designer too. So I quickly get a label together, and it was our suppliers all gave us deep discounts to let us do some fundraising for Feed Nova Scotia. And by that Friday, we had a beer out that was called Stay the Blazes Home, and that blew up our online store like nobody's business. So yeah, we raised over $40,000 for Feed Nova Scotia because of it. So it's just that those kind of dynamic thinking, and our online store basically kept our doors open because of it, because we literally had to become our tap room in the Seaport became our distribution center. And I think we probably were lucky we work at a brewery, because the amount of online orders we were getting at the peak We're talking $30,000 a day. So you just do the math on like how many deliveries that is. And we had to like keep changing our delivery area because one person would be like, I'm just across the line. Can you just, it's $2 down. Can you just give me, so you just make the line a little bit bigger and then the next week it would be somebody else outside the line. So we became very dynamic. Pivoting was so important, even to the point where we're working with our tap rooms and things like that. We did open the Oxford tap room like that November, right before COVID. So you kind of felt it as far as momentum going towards that. So we're starting to see that pick all back up where, there's a student discount if anyone lives up in Quimple. There's a student. We opened a coffee shop before Christmas last year. So again, student discount for coffee. But yeah, it definitely changed the way we do our business and what we're involved with, to the point where our events are starting to come back on. One thing we did maintain, we don't do our concert anymore, the Backlot Bash, which, we've had the Glorious Sons, we've had July Talk, Broken Social Scene play it. We kind of had to cancel that. And we don't really see us going back to doing that again. It was a fun thing to do for 5 years. However, we don't really see that as part of what makes our business great. But we did maintain our Oktoberfest throughout the pandemic by partnering with one of our best customers, being the Stubborn Goat Beer Garden, now the BG down the waterfront. We just wrapped up here at the end of September our 14th annual Oktoberfest. So we're able to work and pivot because we weren't really in the crowd patrolling. We didn't operate our tap room. So we were just like, who's operating now that's a good customer that can handle the crowd? So we did it that way. And I don't think I heard of any exposures as a result. We were never on the list or anything like that. So pretty happy with that. So yeah. That's we changed, but we maintained our core values throughout it all.
$40,000 is amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
And
yeah, so
equally almost amazing as starting the website in 1 week.
Yeah, it was a little hectic, some late nights and things like that, and
Yes.
like learning. And then, I think in all marketing, whether if you're working directly for the client or working in an agency, it's give the client what they want sort of thing. And so, when they want the number just to be not automated and things like that, and getting that report to print out, that allowed us to do our own direct shipping. And then 3 weeks later, Shopify coming up with an app that does it for you. I'm just like, no. But it allowed us to get out there before most people were able to, and so that made a huge difference for us. Yeah.
Yes, that's great. Wonderful. Okay, so our next question is, again, looking at all of us future applying for jobs. Are there any particular skills or attributes that you think would make a marketing candidate stand out from other candidates?
I've been fortunate enough to sit on several interview panels at CNS, and it always amazes me. Everyone's a highly qualified candidate, and there's a lot of them. And then we're in this like, well, I guess it's a good problem to have, but we're like, how do we pick the best of the best? All things being equal. I tend to look at the experience in a qualitative way versus a quantitative. So like, yeah, we may say you need at least 3 years experience to come in, but I'm curious as to what those 3 years looked like. I kind of like to see people who have had jobs or volunteer positions, not even necessarily in marketing, but in positions where, they may have had some curveballs thrown at them. For example, we have a co-op student now who's a dance teacher. And when I heard that they were a dance teacher, I'm like, okay, this person, she knows how to run a class. She knows how to think on her feet, literally. She's accountable to her students. She's got to manage parents. I've never been in dance class, but I assume there's some difficult parents that she has to work with. So for me, I look at that, and even though it's not a marketing job per se, it's something that she's really had to lean into, and maybe I'd prefer that over someone who may have 3 years of experience in a kind of a cushy marketing job that they got right out of school, where they are a small part of a big team and just kind of follow orders and haven't really had to face adversity. So I kind of look for a bit of character.
For us, we just went through this process not too long ago, hiring a marketing events coordinator. So attitude has a lot to do with it for us, because we're a craft brewery, we're a fun place to work. There tends to be a when folks come in for interviews, and we saw this quite a bit, this thought process that professionality and seriousness and being very sort of like this, like I've got to be serious in an interview, go hand in hand. Not necessarily at a brewery. Like we were looking for people that I can teach you, how to talk about beer and things like that. I can't teach attitude. So coming to at it with that kind of things, we do have requirements like skill sets and things like that. And a marketing degree is huge in that. But if you're coming in with like a great attitude, I've created jobs at our organization because someone came in and said, I want to work for you. How do I do this? And then we found a place for them we wouldn't have a social media coordinator now. If it wouldn't be for that person, like 5 years ago, coming up to me in the tap room and basically cornering me. I'm like, wow, okay, you really want to work here. So I'm going to make a spot for you. So we made a social media coordinator position that freed me up to not have to do that part of the job anymore. Yeah, the attitude. And then again, I come back to what I talked about earlier, which is concentration. Like it's great to have a variety of skill sets and things like that, but just having the ability to do what you said, like, so doing those tutorials online, getting in depth, a lot of it, you can find it online. Was I an expert in Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop before I started the job? No, but I quickly learned how to do all of it and came at it with a very different attitude now, which is, show me what you can do. And so portfolios are important from like a design point of view. On the packaging design background, but it's not something you have to have. And then, yeah, like just like I said, attitude and concentration, like those things you can add to make yourself stand out, and just make your resume interesting. Because I literally skimmed over like 95% of them because you're just looking, you've got a pile, and so you're literally going through it. So anything you can do to like formatting, I don't know how many there must be a Google CV formatting that looks exactly the same. So try to make that stand out a little bit more, and then I'm more likely to take, rather than 2 seconds, maybe 3 or 4. To read it over because it's something different and new. Yeah.
Okay. What are the skills and attributes when applying for a job? So I think definitely as students, you might not have like the 3 to 5 years experience, but when you're looking for that first job, having any experience, because obviously they're going to know, hey, you just graduated. You were probably working on your degree. You're not going to have the 3 to 5 experience, but you might have your co-op term where they took the time to teach you and train you with the skills that you'll need in the future. So definitely building some experience through co-op or volunteerism. That's always, I think, a good way to like boost your resume. Because yes, maybe you've worked at like I don't know, like a grocery store or something, but there's also so many others that have done the same. So what is that one thing on your resume that maybe stands out a little more? And I think when you're applying for jobs, I was the serious person, very nervous, sweating. I think not doing that and just being yourself really helps. And also just read the job description before. So I was applying for a job at Energy and Mines for a co-op position. And one of the things on the skills to have section was attention to detail. I went through that website and combed through every single page until I found one spelling mistake. And I pointed it out in the interview. And that was my attention to detail. So it's just actually reading it and then applying it and making sure they know you read it. They know you actually paid attention and you want this job, you want to learn. That really helps, I think. I think that's what sold them on me.
I was going to ask, did you get the job?
I did.
Good.
And I think that was a really great experience and kind of pivoted me towards events. So really, if you want something, do the work and not just superficial, like, oh, I have attention to detail. Great. So does everyone else. Prove that to me.
Just if I could, cover letters, people, please write a cover letter. I got a lot of folks that applied that had lovely resumes, but didn't do anything for a cover letter. It's so important. You're introducing your stuff. I understand that resumes are somewhat rigid documents. They are your skill set, but your cover letter is how you're talking back to folks of the job the job description that they put in front of you. So if you're able to relate those skills and expand upon your resume within your cover letter, it's so important. It makes, like, anything that makes my job easier in selecting you as a candidate, do it. Like that's so important. Even if it's like following up with a phone call, the email, thank you email after the interview, really important sort of things that, like, oh, this person's really interested because they're like doing those steps. Those things make you stand out, in my opinion. Yeah,
the follow-up is really important too, like whether it's a call or an email, because not everyone has HR departments. Trailer Park Boys certainly didn't. So there was just a pile of applicants that they never got around to, because it turns out they're a lot like their characters on TV, and they're doing other things other than business. So I followed up with them, and that's how I got the interview. Of course, I was writing it like, "Dear sir or madam, I was wondering if you had a moment to check my app," and then I erased all that and spoke a little bit more trailer parky, and that, I think, sealed the deal. But yeah, you want to stand out, and you want to show that you want it, and you're not just sending out 100 resumes and hoping you catch one.
Perfect. Thank you. And the last question from me, and then we'll have some questions for our students, kind of branches off what we were just speaking about. But essentially, if you could offer us just one tangible piece of advice, finishing up our degree, moving into our first career, what would it be?
again, it comes back to like talking with people. Right now, you're in a unique opportunity where you're in school, so you really don't need to worry about, other than school, what your day looks like as far as like meeting with folks. Like if I want to go out and have lunch, I've got to move things around because I manage a department and things like that to build my network. It's really hard to build your network once you're in a job, to then you have to make a lot of time, move things around for those like business power lunches and things like that the chamber puts out. They're great events, but it does take time. So use this opportunity now and show your hunger for within the industry to meet with folks like myself or other leaders in the marketing side, because 95% of us will move time around. Some people are really super busy, and in the summertime I'd probably be like, hey, can we get together in September when I have a little bit more time? But I'm willing to make time for anybody who wants to learn about stuff and maybe wants to be, that person could turn into a summer student that could then turn into a full-time employee that can help us out doing multiple things. So that's my advice. Again, put yourself out there. If I, again, going back to that other question, what I would have to do differently, going out there and meeting with folks and just chatting with people, having a coffee. It doesn't take long. And then you can ask them questions directly one-on-one, because it makes a huge difference. If you want to be in that industry, talk to those folks that are in this industry. Yeah.
I would suggest be as nimble as you can, and it may be a long and winding road till you get to where you want to be, as it was for me, but I don't regret any of that. And in fact, I'm very grateful for it. So earlier, there was a show of hands of international students here, and it almost looked like half or more. So that's great. So you understand what it's like to live in a country that's not your own, and all the weird little challenges that come with it. And I know when I was living in Korea, in my 5th year there, I felt like I could speak some Korean, and I knew my way around. I knew all the food, but it would still take me, like, if I wanted to order a pizza from Domino's, it would take me like half a day. So, the challenges. And I think that really builds a lot of character. So if you're not an international student, if you can take some kind of any old co-op or internship in some other country, it's really going to build some character, because every last thing that you do will be a challenge. And if I see that kind of stuff on a resume, I'm really going to be interested.
Okay, my advice is say yes. Say yes to the awkward. Say yes to the things that make you feel not confident. But when you're doing it, try to be a little more confident. And just so I am actually a very anxious person, but probably today it doesn't translate, because I just said yes. I think I asked Megan, why do you want me to speak?
You did.
Me, are you sure? But just do things, because you never know what that'll lead to. So I think just be open to experience, but also I would say one of the things is be open to learning, because when you take these positions, when you volunteer somewhere, you might have someone with a lot more experience that might say, hey, Neha, you tend to talk a lot. You should listen more. And I was very offended by that, but I was open to it. Because they know what they're talking about. They know how that industry works. And so be open to saying yes to the things that make you feel uncomfortable, be open to learning. And the last thing I would say is also ask questions and offer your opinions. A lot of times as students, we're like, okay, I'm just a student. I probably don't have any authority on this table, but you're also a student that has never worked at this organization, that is probably finding more creative solutions, because these people go through the same challenges over and over and over. And maybe there's a fresh set of eyes, and that could be you. And then when you do these kind of things, you stand out. Not like any old co-op student that, just came there, sat quietly at their desk, 4 months passed, done. Do something different.
And branching off that and with what we've talked about, do you want to tell students how I found you, how I got the idea?
Okay, so I also volunteer for the Indian Festivals Club of Nova Scotia. We do events like India Fest, Diwali Carnival, and I said yes to an interview on CTV at 7:45 in the morning. My old professor, Rhonda Bursey, saw that interview, suggested it to Megan, and that's how I'm here. So yeah, just if something comes up to you, I think just be open to the experience, even if it's terrible. I said something wrong on the interview and I didn't even know until after. But no one really knows. Just be confident in yourself. Just smile, because that's your charm. Yeah, go for it.
And it was a great interview. Thank you. So we just have a question from one of our students watching online that I'll read out to you all, and you can all feel free to answer, whoever wants to take it. So the student says, marketing requires creativity. Do you agree that creativity could be either natural or that's something to be learned? Is it difficult to learn to be creative?
So where I work a lot on the design side, like I'm like everything with our logo on it comes from me. So I would say inspiration comes from anywhere. And so the more you put yourself in there, looking at things, like just walking around, I find it. So I wasn't really a creative person. I went to school for political science. You got to be creative, like policy wise. Yeah, sure. Let's talk health policy, but creative and artwork and things like that. Like just finding inspiration, taking a second, like it does feel like much like the government, you're churning things out all the time. So taking that minute and pausing, and then like I have ideas in the shower. I'm like, oh yeah, this one, like let's call it this or let's call it that. But fostering it with other folks, like I would say my hardest time ever being a creative person was during COVID, because being at home, working at home, it was literally me and my dog, and that was it. And so my wife was working in an essential industry, so she was out working. So I was like, okay, what do I do about this now? Like watching TV, having chatter in the background. Yeah, creativity, it comes, but it is a skill. I would say it's a muscle you build over time, going in those things. I still feel some of the times like, man, that's just a rip off of this, and that's the rip off of that, and like those kind of things. But it is building upon those riffs that like allow you to then get to new things. I do find myself, I work in a punny industry. We have like Deja Mu for a milk stout, and we funny names. So I like to do things that are funny, because I find if I laugh at something, I'm going to buy it, and it's kind of fun to deal with. So yeah, I would say that the creativity side of things it's not easy, but usually if something comes to you right away, it's the most creative idea you're going to have. Whereas if you had to go and like go back and over, so it does create sort of like the muscle memory there for sure. So for me, I would say that, yeah, you can definitely develop a creative side for sure. And then review what others have done and see how you can then, because something will come to you. Yeah.
I do believe that some of it is natural, but I do think that you have different tools available to use to develop the parts that, maybe you're more of a numbers person, but how can you deal with these numbers more creatively? That's something you could maybe figure out. I can't do that. I think also just asking yourself questions. So like, yes, but what if just keep challenging yourself with other alternatives. My roommate does this thing where she goes yes and no, and then she'll argue both sides of it. And I'm like, this doesn't help me. Stop it. So I think it is a little bit unnatural, but you can always question yourself. And if you're open to doing that, then yes, you can always develop it. And I think even when you're a naturally creative person, you kind of get in the rut of like, okay, I know how to do this. It's super easy. It'll take me 20 minutes. You got to pause then and say like, hey, is this getting boring? Is this what we've been doing for so long? Can we change it? Just constantly question yourself. That's what an anxious person does. And that's what you should do.
Harness the anxiety. I think there are people with more natural inclinations to creativity, just as there are people with more natural inclinations to structure and organization. And what I have had the most success in is combining those types of people on a small team. And because you may have the creative person throwing out all these crazy ideas, but the actual hard work of implementing them into a marketing campaign, they're going to need someone who knows how to take notes and knows where they saved files on their computer and that kind of thing. So I think there's ideally you have a dynamic like that on your team. But yeah, you can if say you're not creatively inclined, I think you can go find ideas. There's not a whole lot of difference between stealing an idea and being inspired by an idea, and it happens all the time in marketing. And for me, we're working on things in the Nova Scotian market, and if I see the government of California do something kind of cool, maybe I'll adapt it to something from Nova Scotia. Or I actually like stealing ideas from pro wrestling. WWE has some of the best social media out there. So if I can pull something and use it somehow in government social media, inspiration is a good thing. And Justin mentioned the shower. I get so many great ideas in the shower, and I was trying to wonder why that is. I think at first I thought my ideas were reverberating off of the tile in the bathroom, but I don't think that's real. I think what it is you're kind of in a place where you've shut off all the noise, especially nowadays with our phones, and coming out of the pandemic with my team at work uses Microsoft Teams a lot, or a lot of groups will use Slack or whatever. There's this constant noise coming from your phone or outside, or while you're driving on your car speakers. So if you can just go for a walk and don't bring your earbuds, or take a shower and don't turn on music, I think it's a good way to sort of really maybe get uncomfortable with your own thoughts and find something creative in there.
Can I just say also Pinterest? How many of you have a Pinterest account? Neha. It's a saving tool for marketers, I think, or at least for an events person.
Yeah, I agree. Pinterest is great. And then keep a log. If you see creative ideas, I keep a log book too of oh, that was cool. That'd be a great name for this, or a great thing for that. And sometimes I go back to it because I'm like, where did that come from? That was a really great idea. I remember last year, it was funny because CNS released this great, and Tourism Nova Scotia released this great campaign. It was have a wintervention. And we created a beer 4 years ago called Wintervention. And it was just oh, do you want to collaborate here? We've got a beer that we make that's called Wintervention. And it was just oh, and my boss is did they steal that idea? I'm like, no, they didn't steal that idea. The inspiration comes, you just put a W in front of intervention. It's a Wintervention. It's great ideas can look very similar and feel very similar. So creativity comes from multiple places. And so it's just if you see something cool, write it down, keep a book. I have one of these that are just for ideas, literally just for ideas.
Also, sorry, I have so many thoughts right now. Bounce them off of your colleagues. If you feel like you can't find a creative solution, I think that's one of the best ways, I think, to talk it out. You always figure out plans. My colleague Sandra and I will go through the step-by-step of each event, and then we're oh, wait, this is genius. So it's really, really just an amazing thing to have that relationship where you can bounce things off of people.
Thank you. Awesome. I'd love to have some questions from the room. If anyone had a question they would like to ask, I'm just going to pass the microphone.
Hi, my name is Winnie. I got a question. I'm a diploma from tourism and hospitality management, but I don't have a degree in marketing. But I'm looking for a long career because I graduate next year. I would look into selling and marketing a tourism product. And I heard that you mentioned about a digital marketing certificate, and I want to, before I get the job, I want to enhance some of these skills. So I know any of you not from the marketing sector, and you would give me some advice. What would I go in? What courses I could look at? What kind of marketing skills I would looking into more practical to acquire? Thank you.
So a great one, like that's the one I have on my wall. You renew it once a year, is the Google ads. They have a variety of like either search engine, I keep saying it, search engine, we used to call it SEO, search engine optimization sort of things. And then you can have display ads and like certificates, and each one will give you the insides and out of all the certificates, all the Google advertising that they have. Now that's strictly for Google. And so but they have a wide variety of those ones available. So that allows you to get on the #1 search engine in the world. Like I remember when I was coming up in university, there was like 10 search engines. So this is way easier now that you just go to Google. Shows my age. But yeah, no, that's the one that we use primarily for our, because we see the most success with, like, social media ads are great, but where we get the most organic reach is from, because we want to drive people not necessarily to our online store, we want to send them to the NSLCs. That's where we see the best success for us. And so if you're able to know that inside and out, you'll bring, like, digital marketing, you will bring a brand new skill set to any small, medium-sized tourism operation here in Atlantic Canada, because like, it is hard. And got people like me who are in charge of a team. I don't have time to go down and learn. Like, I do this on the weekends and evenings. And so it's hard. If you have that skill set already, it makes life so much easier. So yeah, those certificates are free to do online. They have advanced ones that you pay a little bit of money to do, but the baseline stuff that will take you above and beyond most of your colleagues are free.
I actually, so the Halifax Chamber of Commerce offers free training in partnership with the Department of Labor, Skills and Immigration. We do courses like marketing, social media, communications, and we run these courses 3 times a year. They're all free, and then at the end you get a certificate. It is a bit more of a time commitment, but cheaper than a university degree. So that's always nice, and you can always take multiple courses, which is also great. I know the Center for Women in Business also does this, these courses in collaboration with LSI. So I think there's definitely some programs in the province, and if you are interested in a course like that, we'll be starting a course in January, and you can let me know.
As far as organic social media too, so aside from some of the paid stuff, there are a lot of companies that run social media platforms such as Hootsuite, or we use at the Government of Nova Scotia, we use Sprout Social. There's Buffer out there. Those types of companies, part of their marketing is trying to teach everybody how to use social media. So they have all kinds of free resources that really will help you learn the nuts and bolts of just putting together a nice post, which sounds easy, but I've seen a lot of colleagues come and go at CNS who struggle with some of those basics. So I'd check out those.
Also, sorry, can I just add one more thing, just bouncing off of your idea? I would just look at your own social media. What is the content that speaks to you? What is the content that's doing well, and what are the pieces of that you like? Why were you attracted to that post? If you're open to trying reels, you don't have to post them, but that's always a great way for you to like explore and create that content. So that would be like a good way to develop your social media skills. I know I go on my For You page and constantly keep scrolling. I'm like, oh, look at that. She used all of these like, what's it called? I don't know, like weird punctuations, and creates like beautiful post that I'm like, wow, this is just amazing. So I think also there's also a lot of videos on social media, like how to create a beautiful Instagram video, 30 seconds, and there you go.
That's great. Thank you. We just have a question towards the back of the room here.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for three speakers for a wonderful presentation. I really appreciate that. I'm Tien and I'm a student in Bachelor of Public Relations. So I have a question for Jake. So as a social media work at the Communications Nova Scotia, you work with a lot of Nova Scotian as an environment. So is there any like kind of situation where you hit like public kind of like not agree with what you're saying on social media, or is that like kind of situation that you like need to turn your alert mode when you talk about something? Is there any kind of topic like that, and can you share with us like how can you balance that, you know, understanding the Nova Scotian is the most important as a social media of the government? So yeah, can you share with us that? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Typically when we post something, 50% of the people hate it, and the other 50% hate it for another reason. It's very rare that we have a completely positive post, because everybody has their own lives and their own perspectives. And there's, you know, it's a small province, but there's many different types of people in Nova Scotia, so many different types of perspectives. We know just from working in it every day, we see the responses, and we kind of have we've been able to build like a natural understanding of how a post will perform. But I guess some ways that we try to mitigate or maybe craft the post so that it's not so much anger is we kind of think about every little word. Like a tweet is not a lot of words, or a Facebook post or Instagram post should be short. So, you know, like, let's take a look at those words that we're using. Are they kind of government language, or are they actual social media language? So let's not talk down to people like we are government and you must do this. Like, let's try and be humans with each other. We like to use a lot of photography of real Nova Scotians who are maybe benefiting from whatever service that we're using. I guess we try to make things more human, and that's the first step. But they'll hate it anyway. So.
Thank you. Did anyone have any more questions? It can be about anything. No? I'm just going to branch off something we've been talking about a lot in our other panels this week, and it's sort of the work-life balance, mental health, wellness, self-care. Can you speak a little bit on how your organization sort of promotes those things, or what you do yourself to make sure, you know, your mental health's in check, self-care, especially during these times?
All right. I think for us, there's a general understanding that when it's event season, or in any industry, if it's busy, you're going to be a bit more stressed. And I think for myself, I openly talk about my mental health, as you've all heard. I also think it's very important to communicate with your employer or your colleagues, because a lot of times people are just busy in their own worlds. They're doing their own things. They have their own deadlines to meet. So I'll give you an example. On Monday, I was feeling really, really down. Couldn't place a finger on it. Went to my boss's office. I said, Becky, I need to leave. I need to go work out, and then I will log in again later. And she said, okay, it's Halloween. Just be sure you'll actually, finish the stuff that you need. And I think once you build that relationship with your employer, they know that you're going to do the work. But it's just being open. So I think, yeah, that's my, that's how I deal with it. Working out and being open.
I kind of alluded to the fact that during the pandemic, we just had so much negativity online, and you probably all see it in your lives online. I don't, the pandemic, I don't think Donald Trump helped, but the online atmosphere is really nasty these days. And so, especially us in social media, I would consider on the front lines from my team. There's the people that plan the communication strategy, and then there's those of us who execute it and deal with the public. And just so taking some perspective and realizing that the people who do make angry comments are people who are uniquely motivated to do that. The average person, you think about this is good advice from Neha. If you think about your social media activity as a way to understand how people use social media. And yeah, most of the time I'm just scrolling by, and if I see something from Garrison that I like, I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I keep going. I'm not necessarily motivated to stop and like it. And I'm certainly not motivated to stop and say anything angry unless it really makes me angry. So what you're dealing with is a small focus group really of angry people who are quite loud. So keeping that perspective is important. And then also to echo what Neha said is find that personal time and really claw it back. We have a lunch break at work, and I see some people just eating their lunch at their computer and typing away, and that's the lunch part of lunch break, but the other word is break in lunch break. That I get pretty aggressive, and I try to claw that, make sure I have that time and go for a walk or go exercise or whatever. You gotta turn the brain off at some point.
So for our organization, I think there's a perception issue for sure of what it's like to work at a brewery, beer, and then what it is actually like. So we have it's not that we're saving lives or anything like that, but we do have a stressful workplace, especially during the summertime. And this weekend, my team worked probably overtime. So I'm going to go back probably today and say, okay, what's your plan? It's going on Wednesday here for taking your time back that you need to take back that you put in on the weekend, because we're all salaried employees. So you should be taking that time back. Definitely, for sure. There definitely is one of those things where you build confidence with my new team member. She's already hitting it out of the park. So I don't even need if she doesn't come in until 10 a.m. I know that's because of a reason. She's got the work done and things like that. It's about managing. Now I'm a new parent, so it's even more important for me. I do find myself that clock. I do early morning, so I do a 7 to 3 day. So when that clock gets around 3 o'clock, I'm pretty antsy to leave to go see my new baby. But I was never like that. I was probably the worst one for work-life balance, to be honest with you. So that I do make the effort, because I'm bad at it, to make sure my team is good at it, because I know what impacts that can have on your life and things like that. And so taking your time, because beer is about, and the hospitality industry, especially in tourism, is about those good times. And so we tend to miss out on those good times. So taking those back and creating your own memories and things like that. I think about things like over the holidays that are coming up, or even over Canada Day. It's our single largest day of the year is Canada Day at our tap room on the Seaport. So it's all hands on deck. But how can we make that interesting and fun and get that time back for people who can't? So we have a lot of staff events too that aren't just okay, let's go drink some beer somewhere. Let's have some fun, and how can you rejuvenate yourself? So for us, it's about, and if an employee tells me or a team member tells me that they need to take some time, I'm more than willing to be acceptable. But it's also about culture too. We have a very understand it. Our culture is very diverse at our place. So we have a good fit for people who want to come in and work and then take their time back. And so we're very open. That's the thing. And it does, I think more and more companies are starting to, whether they're small, medium, or large, are starting to see the value of mental health and being healthy towards that. And it is mental health. It's not just sort of okay, those things don't matter, because that's the way it was when I was coming up in the workforce. It was well, what's wrong? Well, I'm just not feeling that well today. Well, did you go see a doctor? No, it's not about that. Well, it's changed so much in the last 2 decades for sure. Yeah.
Sorry, I just have one more thing, as usual. I think also it's really your mindset. I was talking to Becky, my boss, before coming here, and I was like, I'm really nervous. I don't know if I can do this. And she goes, Neha, you get to do this. You actually, not a lot of people have the option to do that. This is you're choosing to do this. So I think when you're having these moments of whether like doubt or fatigue, just like, I think realize why you started this project, or why you think that, maybe this is why, just refocus on why you started it, and remember that you chose to do this. And it's absolutely like a joy when you're going through your life and your work, and you're like, okay, hey, we're hosting the premiere with 800 other people in the room. I got to do that. So not a lot of people are in the space that where you are. And so just readjusting your mindset that way. Also, one last thing, sorry. What the question about advice going into a workspace and starting your career, I think when you're starting this, don't, like a lot of us, I know I started and I was like, well, who's going to pay me the most money? That's where I want to be. But it's also, what about the business's values? Does that align with you? And that's how I kind of said yes to this job at the chamber, because I remember in my interview, the person asking me the question was like, picture your perfect employer and that workspace. And I said, it's got to be like a family, because I love feeling that love and that bond. And that is exactly what we are at the chamber. So reevaluate your values, and then pick a career that way, as opposed to the money or the fame.
Thank you. That's really good advice. And this brings us to the end of our panel today. So could we please give a big round of applause for our panelists? Thank you. And I have all the contact information for our panelists as well. So if you have any individual questions, I can definitely connect you with them. And just a reminder, if you're in the room, please fill out the sign-up sheet so that we have record you're here. And don't forget to do your Learning Passport Moodle survey for this event if you're part of that program. Okay.